First introduce. Okay. Kia ora, everybody. Wonderful to see some audience here, and a special welcome to Waqar, who's going to present on conflict development nexus, case of Afghanistan. So please welcome Waqar. All power to you, Waqar.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria, for the introduction. And so my topic is on the conflict and development. So, I have taken the case study of Afghanistan because it's quite relevant in the current context, especially with issues related to development and security. So I hope you can see this map. So this is the map of Afghanistan. This is bordered by Iran, Pakistan, Turkmenistan, and Tajikistan. So some of the Central Asian republics, this Uzbekistan, and it has been regarded as one of the in the past literature like the graveyard of the empires. So earlier there was Soviet Union and then the US invasion. And there is a famous political scientist, Zbigniew Brzezinski. He was the political advisor in the 1960s and 1980s in the US to JF Kennedy and some of the other presidents. So he wrote a book on the grand chessboard. So it's like a chessboard where all of these global power rivalry is taking place. But because like we are development studies students of international development, so my aim is to present the impacts of that war and conflict on the development aspects, like how it impacted on the security situation and how like security in a broader sense, social security, environmental security, economic security, and individual level security. So how it impacted all of these aspects. So moving on, this is just like a picture of the devastation. A lot of lives are lost. You know, everyone knows after 9/11, the US decision to attack Afghanistan in terms of, you know, the war on terror and everything. The story goes on from there. So yeah, so this is just a picture of the recent earthquake in Afghanistan, devastation caused, and there was not enough funds with the Afghan government to help the people, and because the aid is blocked due to the regime in Afghanistan, nobody accepts, no country is accepting, and therefore their banks are frozen and nobody's helping. So now, yeah, so coming to the presentation itself, like, so yeah, so I have introduced like the Afghan conflict. It's like brewing for 20 years, starting from 2001, not to mention the earlier, you know, invasion by the Soviets and the resulting impacts. So the central dogma, the central question of this, my paper is like, is development leading to security or security is leading to development? So this is the question which has been asked a lot of times by scholars of development studies, international relations, security studies, like whether this is like interlinking, what's the relationship, what's the kind of relationship, what are the various aspects of this relationship. So now in terms of Afghanistan and other countries where these kinds of interventions took place, a lot of theoretical perspectives are formulated, like right to protect, liberal peace intervention, new wars. So the new wars, this was a term coined by Mary Kaldor, and she has written like the area of location was from in the failed or fragile and weak states. So these kind of wars are different from the earlier wars because the earlier wars were mostly for power, but these wars or these conflicts are for peace building and introducing new development approaches, new policies for the developing countries to reduce the sense of insecurity. So basically the liberal peace thesis, like it's mentioned over here. So this is the basically, this is telling like insecurity leads to underdevelopment, or underdevelopment leads to insecurity. So in order to address this root cause, underdevelopment needs to be addressed. So the only way is to like the boots on ground approach as adopted by the most of the Western countries in the case of Afghanistan, and then pursue some policies, introduce democratic reforms, introduce development, and then all of these problems will be sorted. So now coming to the next slide. So this is just like more of the extension of the first introduction, the first slide, like this is mostly theoretical, like how these concepts were formulated in the 1900s and 2000s. The Cold War ended. There was a new conception of development, a new conception of security. So this is already, I mentioned, projecting underdevelopment as leading to more conflict and violence. And the fragile states or the weak states, they are considered a threat to human security, to international peace and security. So intervention is must. So now, like coming to the case study of Afghanistan. So as I mentioned in my introduction of this presentation, 20 years US, NATO, ISAF presence in Afghanistan, a lot of development actors, development sector organizations, NGOs, a lot of work was going on there. So the question is like whether it was really enhancing development. So yes, and both yes and no. So this is the question. This is the central question: whether that intervention in the name of development and addressing the conflict led to real on-ground development or not. So number one, like there was some of the. So this is the information which I got from people, like I talking with the people from Afghanistan, some of the bureaucrats and some of the ordinary people. So this is the data which I collected in the form of, and I also written in my summary sheet. So there was an improvement in agriculture. There was some institution building, educational institutions, schools, colleges, universities, better transport. And this is the figure I got from, I had a interview with one of the Minister of Education of Afghanistan, Ataullah Wahidia. He was the minister in the Ghani administration. So he told me like there were, before the invasion, there were only 900,000 boys going to school. But after that, the number of boys and girls, this is the both boys and girls, reached to 10 million. So like there is a drastic change. International restaurants, like the multinational companies opening up, Starbucks, McDonald's, and also introducing their culture in the traditional Afghan context, and construction of highways, motorways. So these are the major towns: Kabul, Jalalabad, and Jalalabad to Torkham. So these are the main some of the development works going on there. So yes, in terms
So
of.
Waqar, just to let you know, I will give you 1 more minute. So see what you want to say to finish up, because you're already over 8 minutes now. Okay.
Okay. So there was an increase in life expectancy. You can see I don't need to explain this. GDP doubled, etc., etc. And then moving on to the mission, the US mission or the Western mission to introduce development reforms. So, but you can see most of the spending is going on security in these graphs. So I don't need to explain that. And this is for 2012 to 21. Again, you can see increasing spending on security and less on human development. you can see a shift in these figures in 2021. And this is also a graph like fear of personal security and safety. So that is increasing from 2006 to 2019. This is a Brookings Institution graph, and the poverty rates are also increasing. So the on-ground impacts like development gains. So what were the on-ground impacts? So development gains were marked by chronic issues of corruption, bad governance, and elite capture. So elite capture is the phenomenon when economic and political elites divert. So the politicians in Afghanistan had a lot of sway, so they divert the development funding to their own kitties, like their own pockets. Development projects focused on areas like we were considered safe, so development was limited to major cities like Kabul and not for the rural areas. And there was an extreme involvement of military in development activities, so civilians were not taken into account. And so, yeah. And the funding was greater than the absorptive capacity, like the amount of aid Afghanistan was receiving. It was not able to receive that, not able to manage those funds. And there was a lack of coordination between the civil society and the development agencies. Even in the last years, it was everyone in the development sector talked about the mission failure. So everyone was talking, it was on every tongue, mission failure, mission failure. So, and it was also regarded as a black hole in terms of the corruption and bad governance. So the discourse of liberal intervention, peace building, that was ran into a disaster, and it engendered the same problems it needed to address. So in words of U.S. General John Allen, he says that we went from an end state to an end date. So instead of making a peaceful, democratic Afghan society, they went to an end, like a close-up, a withdrawal from Afghanistan. And so some of the concluding points, I started from the core readings, like quoting a reference, and again from like one of the core readings, I took these points like there needs to be more to be done to engage with the local population, and peace building is a tedious task, even like in Ireland with the the war in the Ireland conflict. So in terms of Afghanistan, it's even more difficult. So these were some of the points, and I'm happy because I think I'm over time, so I will address all these.
Yes, you're very well over time. So you actually used up all your question time as well. So I would suggest that we have just one question. If anybody, first of all, let's thank Waqar for preparing such an interesting topic. Fantastic. When I saw that you had 16 slides, I was already a little bit worried. And it's very difficult to find a balance between just cutting you off and at the same time not losing some of your really important points. And you made some very, very interesting points there. So can I invite somebody to ask a question to Waqar? Sarah, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure.
Yes,
I'll
thank
ask
you.
a question. And I realise that that's over time too. Look, I just thought that final comment to say that the strategies of intervention actually engendered the same problems that they had gone to address. And I just wondered if Waqar had any idea about what could have made a difference, considering that over the 20 years was really a securitization, militarization approach for strategic advantage rather than a human security approach. How would that have been better enabled, do you think, Waqar?
Thank you,
Sarah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So yeah, I think first of all, the motivation matters, in terms of why was this intervention in the first place. So whether it was for strategic purposes, whether it was for development, or whether it was for some other XYZ. So so the first point is like, in response to this question, is like, yes, the goals were, as I showed in the graph, the goals were mostly security driven. So there was an increased spending on security and less spending on development. So that was one of the major the objectives were not clearly defined. And then moving on, the second point, in terms of civil society and the local Afghan culture. So we see, because I was involved in a lot of research institutes and a lot of conferences organized on Afghanistan, everyone talking 20 years, lot of funding, spending, the Bonn conference in Germany, but in those conferences, the civil society wasn't engaged. And the people who are going there, they were just selected few people, and then after the conference was over, they were taking over the government positions. They were inducted as bureaucrats, or so that was not helpful. And thirdly, like the on-ground development agencies, they were not trained, or they were not enough. They had a lack of coordination even amongst themselves. And they were so fearful. They didn't go out of the major cities. They didn't interact with the local people. The coordination between the defense and the development agencies was really poor. And those were one of the reasons. So there was no consistency and no proper management. So that's, yeah.
Okay, thank you so very much. Shall we just say thank you to Waqar just one more time? And I will stop the recording now.